I was caught speeding, going 90 miles an hour on the interstate on the way back from Owen County to Louisville when I was still living in Louisville, and I had to go to traffic school. Okay, so I had to pay a fine. I had to go to traffic school, and I went to traffic school in Radcliffe, and it was a gentleman by the name of Shoemate. Bryce Shoemate was the one that was teaching this class. And he said a lot of interesting things. He was charismatic, seemed like a pretty nice person, just smiling. Hey, well, this is how I am, joking, making a bunch of jokes, kind of just, being jovial. And I liked him. I mean, basically, my idea of like a fascist is just kind of like, what the hell are you doing, boy? And he was like, hey, everybody, it's not going to be all like, da 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 da. But in the very end, there's an exchange of dialogue, and he had asked anybody who thinks, he's like, everybody believes that laws make the roadway safer, right? And then I shook my head no, and he saw me do it, and he kind of looked away, and he was like, you did? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, well, why do you think that? And as soon as I said, I was like, in Germany? Oh, but we're not in Germany. Immediately. Didn't even let me make my point. And then I said something about, I kind of changed it up a little bit instead of sort of making my point. And then I was just saying, well, I didn't hurt anybody, and you took my money. He's like, oh, I didn't take your money. And I was like, well, the state did, right? So the state was able to get, a large fine out of me, and I didn't hurt anybody. So, I did have a point, but since he didn't let me make a point, I'm telling the world. Now the whole world gets to hear about what I was trying to say. And it's actually a good thing that I was wanting to say. So, okay, first I'm going to go with all the good things, okay? So in the very beginning, they asked him if he was a county cop or city cop or a state trooper, and he was like, well, state troopers, they don't ever get in trouble. So he was kind of saying that he gets in trouble for things, but state troopers, they don't really get in trouble for shit. So the state boys can do anything and everything, which is fascinating. There is more of a constraint. There is more power for people to put pressure on their local police and their county police than there is for the state boys or for the feds. Now, that being said, if you have an honest sheriff, the sheriff of a county is the one who kind of rules the whole roost. And if they don't want DEA, they don't want the state boys, I don't know, the state boys might try to say that they got some right to be there because the state sort of has, they're Leviathans, so they kind of have power over everything. They're the ones that define the laws, but they're the ones that define the laws, and the defined home rule says that the sheriff he's the main guy. He's the main dude, okay? So anything that goes through the county has to go through the sheriff. So that's a local boy. And he could tell KSP, he could tell, DEA or ATF or FBI or anybody else that wants to do investigations in his county to get the hell out of here, that it's his county, it's his jurisdiction, and he don't need their help. If he wants to, because a lot of times they try to butt in, and they try to take over once they butt in. Some interesting facts, okay? Radcliffe actually is part of the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most restaurants, okay? Most fast food restaurants. That's Radcliffe, I guess, in an amount of area, a certain amount of area. So there is a lot of fast food restaurants in Radcliffe, Kentucky. This is, I wrote it down, but it doesn't really seem, or it didn't seem at the time important, but he was like, oh, I'm definitely for corporal punishment. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. If those kids do something wrong, I'm going to whip the shit out of them. Alright, because that's fucking hilarious, right? To beat the fuck out of your kids, your own flesh and blood. I'm going to beat the shit out of them. Then there was some black women who was actually in favor of it. They was laughing, oh yeah. But actually, it wasn't. The black women were just, I won't say but, because the black women were the most vocal about it. But I guarantee you, I saw a statistic: 80 to 90% of people are beating their kids. I cannot stand child violence against an innocent and vulnerable person, and that which you hold down with violence are allowed to violence against you. Right? If you're being oppressed with violence, like slaves, they're very much allowed to take that whip on the massa and just beat the fuck out of massa. There's no difference. So let's see. When you're falling behind a car, you got to be behind 2 or 4 seconds when following distance when you're behind a car. We talked about the EON lights, or the ion lights, ION, about how people try to bright light you, but there's some lights actually today where they're so bright they'll bright light you anyways. They also talked about the graduating licensing program, where before, when you would get a permit in Kentucky, you had to have a permit for a month, and then you could apply for your license, and you know, once you had your permit, then you could practice with a licensed driver. Now it's a little different. Now you have to go through a whole bunch of shit. You got to go through a permit phase of 1 month. You got to go through an intermediate phase of 6 months, and then you have to have a license for a year. You know, and then you become, you know, a full-blown licensed person. So that's you're almost 18 by the time you actually get your real license. So it's a graduating license system. There's when you drive, you actually have to drive 40 hours in the day and 10 hours at night before you can even get your intermediate license. So I think within that month you have to clock in 50 hours. You got to clock in 50 practice hours. And you can only have one non-family person in the car with you. So you can't be joyriding with like 4 or 5 of your friends. You can only have one person who's not in your family in your car. And there's a no texting law in Kentucky, but for young people you can't have any cell phone at all. For anybody that's under 18 years old. So no cell phone whatsoever in the car. Let's see. Other interesting facts. If you don't have any insurance, it's a $1,000 fine. So make sure you get insurance, because insurance, even though it's pretty expensive, for me, it's about like $600 every year. But if I don't have it, I'm gonna get fined $1,000. So you know, why not get insurance? But people want to talk about Obamacare. I'm mandated to have car insurance, right? And if there was government insurance, that would be so cheap. Everybody has to get insurance. But we're mandated to get private insurance, so they're forcing us to get private goods. That's like forcing us to buy McDonald's, right? We have to buy food, and therefore we have to buy from a private establishment. Driving records are $2. If you got 10 days to when you move to change your address on your license. Let's see. So the fines. The amount of money when you pay a fine, so say you pay a $100 fine, 85% of that money goes to the general fund, and then 15% of that goes to the jails. So there is a prison plantation complex going on, and there's a Leviathan. Most of it goes to the state. So basically the state of Kentucky is the one that's making all the money from the speeding tickets and through the fines. So if you got some local boys or local sheriffs, Kentucky State Police, they're more. It makes more sense because it's going pretty much straight in their pockets. But the local boys, they're not seeing that money. It's going into the general fund, and so the state is using that money. So if they're actually not making any revenue off of it, and that's, I don't know, like it's against their self-interest, you know, in terms of making their own money. And they have, you know, what vested interest do they really have? They're basically just being sadistic fucking psychos. If somebody's driving all over the place and they're driving recklessly, and they save that, you know, that person and kind of get them off the road and see if they're drunk or whatever, yeah, that's a good thing. But if, you know, they're just getting anybody like going 1 mile over the speed limit, or somebody doing a rolling stop, or you know, some little trivial petty offense where nobody had got injured, but they're fucking with them just because they like to fuck with people. Well, that's bullshit. So not only, so the state is getting 85% of the money, and the jails are making 15%. The jails, they're giving the jails money, right? So the jails, the jailers, they want you to get as many tickets and stuff. So actually, I guess the jails, I don't know, that might be for the state too, or maybe that's for the local jails. In the county I grew up in, there is no jail there, so I'm not sure what they would be financing right there. So yeah, that's pretty much the notes that I took. He told me that if you go along with the flow of traffic, that's wrong. No, you can't go along with the flow of traffic. But if everybody's going 90 miles an hour and I just hit on my brakes and go 55, I'm going to start a fucking 20-car pileup, or I'm going to be a nuisance on the road, right? So that is in the driver's manual to go with the flow of traffic, or it used to be. I don't know why they would change that. It makes sense because you can't go that much slower than everybody else. You got to go along with the flow of traffic. And so, okay. So the argument that I had, right, he had asked who here agrees with traffic laws. No, I don't agree with traffic laws. The society creates bad behavior. It was a white guy too. It was a white male who was teaching this. So society creates bad behavior, according to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So there's two schools of thought during the Enlightenment. Okay, you got Thomas Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes says that the state of nature is that everybody is at each other's throat. It's a war against everybody, and basically, it's you know, life is short and brutal and miserable and poor, and I don't know. That's kind of the quote he was saying. But basically, you're isolated, you're by yourself, and nobody trusts one another, and it's just horrible. The state of nature that he assumes is who we are when we were, you know, the cave people, or when we were the jungle people, right? When we were, you know, in our original man self, in our original animal form, before we got, you know, started speaking language and started being, like, you know, so-called civilized. He said that we were all evil, and then because that people are evil, therefore we need a strong state to be able to smash people into submission and make them do right. People are evil, you need a strong state to smash them into submission. That contrasts with Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who says that people are born good, and it's society who corrupts them. And I believe Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I believe people are born good, and society corrupts them, because you know, there's violent psychos out there all the time who's just looking for some tiny little thing to fuck you up on. Anything they hear, anything they can. Oh, that's wrong. I'm gonna fuck you up. Why? Not because it's gonna help anybody, but because I'm a fucking asshole and I want to fuck people up. I get a sadistic fucking thrill out of being shitty to people. That's the police officers. And so what I feel like what that happens is that makes people's behavior change. When I drive on the road, I want everybody to know what I'm doing. I have bright lights on. I have my blinker going right, going left. I want everybody to know. And whenever there is you know, when a person is looking for some shit that's going down, it's probably in your best interest to lie. You know, if they sit there and say, I mean, I don't know, anything like, okay, if you don't have if you're not a licensed driver, say you got your license suspended and you're still on the road anyways, and they say, well, is your license suspended? No. Tell them, if they ask you if your license is suspended, tell them no. And see, that's society making, you know, people into a bad person. In general, I think it's good to have your lights on so people know that you're on the road and see that you come in, to have your blinkers on, to turn to the right, to turn to the left. And it's good not to lie, to always tell the truth. These are typically what you would consider good things. But because we have this oppressive Leviathan all down, you know, weighing upon us, then that kind of forces people to you know, not put on their lights and not to sort of be seen. They don't want to be seen, so they just kind of want to just skate on by and to lie, to make, you know, are you a licensed driver? Well, you know, no, I'm not right now, but I put the money in. I'm about to do this, so I don't give a shit. You're going to jail. Fuck you. Whoa, damn, that's some bullshit. And it sucks too, because basically that's just some lazy shit. That's just some lazy bullshit. There are sadistic fucking assholes that want to fuck people up, but it's also lazy. They don't want to have to. I don't even know, actually, they have to deal with paperwork, and so I'm not sure if laziness even comes into it. That would excuse their behavior, but it doesn't excuse their behavior. So what's the point of all this? Well, okay, so he had asked me, and I'm gonna actually speak about this on another video, maybe one or two more. But there's you know, what's the point for traffic laws? He didn't allow me to be able to say what it is that I wanted to say. I said that in Germany, you know, there's a town. I didn't even say like the whole country. I was just talking about one town. But he assumed I meant all of Germany. And I was trying to say there was one town where there's no stoplights, there's no stop signs, there's no sidewalks, and then basically the pedestrians and the people driving have to make eye contact with each other and recognize who they are, and so they're not hitting each other and running into each other. And it's been a remarkable success. There's probably about 11 cities that I got documented, specific cities. There's even one in Washington. So his retort was, oh, well, this is America. Well, there's a city in Washington, Langley, Washington, USA. There's a city in Langley, Washington, USA, who is experimenting with this no traffic laws sort of model. And I also mentioned Haiti, and I said that what people have to do in Haiti is that, you know, people have to walk to work, they got to cross the street, they got to drive through the street. So instead of relying on stop signs and the laws, they actually have to make contact with each other and communicate with one another. And so that can be, I've seen both reports that says that it's faster or it could be slower. But it's, you know, it works. There's less wrecks and there's less accidents that's happening. People have to use their own kind of, you know, their own logic and their own sort of sophisticated knowledge instead of just sort of saying, well, we got a stop sign and there's red lights and I don't give a fuck about anybody from one red light to the next red light. I'm just trying to get through, and if somebody jumps out of me, then that's their fault and that's their problem. It's not my fault. So, oh, this is interesting too. He said that if it's not posted on a rural road, the speed limit's 55 miles an hour, which I didn't know that.